Do me a favor and think about your money. Not how much you have, but instead how you feel about it. Why does it all just seem to disappear? I mean, you wake up early in the morning, work hard at your job, and get paid, but before you know it, it's all gone. It's not a question of your budgeting skills, but instead an organized attack by governments, banks, and billionaires. To these people, your money disappearing is not a bug of the system, but a feature. Something has changed. And no, I'm not just talking about your bank balance. Your brain and how it processes money has been manipulated, and weirdly enough, the solution may just be cows. But first, what is money? Although you can see it, touch it, smell it, and hell, if you're crazy enough, you can eat it. But have you ever stopped to write down on paper what money really means? Well, if you did, then it would look something like this. Money is anything that is generally accepted as a medium of exchange for goods and services. It serves as a unit of account to measure and compare value, acts as a store of value for future use, and functions as a standard of deferred payments in settling debts. If money is anything that meets these conditions, then surely enough, even cows could become money, under the right conditions of course. And in fact, they did, in places as far apart as East Africa and Ireland, many centuries ago. But that's something we'll talk about later on in the video. For now, I want you to keep this in mind. The evolution of money is set forth with the goal to reduce friction, but every time money reduces friction, it becomes more and more abstract. Remember this. 650 BC, Lydia. You are the fourth ruler of the Merman dynasty. Your name is King Alyattes, and your kingdom, Lydia, is prospering. Your kingdom has a strong army that can not only protect your kingdom, but expand it, whilst being strategically located between a trade route that connects Asia and Europe, meaning that every merchant worth his own is bound to pass through your kingdom if they wish to sell their wares all across the world. That would be music to any king's ears. Not only is your kingdom strong, but it also boasts a thriving economy, but that's not enough for you. Only you understand the situation on the ground. The current system of battling and trading is way too slow and inefficient. Is there no way to improve it? You think to yourself. You know that if you could find a way to improve it, your kingdom's economy will grow, allowing you to collect more taxes and thereby allowing you to collect more wealth for yourself. You observe that although merchants sometimes barter, most of the time you see them paying in bullion coins. The bullion coins first have to be tested for their purity and then weighed with a scale before any transaction takes place. Is there really no way to hasten this process? You ponder and ponder and ponder. When it rains, you think about this problem. When the sun shines, you think. When your queen invites you to bed, you say nay, for you have dedicated your life to solving this problem. And suddenly, on a random Tuesday, it finally hits you. What if your government took away all the time-consuming aspects of the trade and left only the transaction? You see, Lydia is located near Pactolus River, which is abundant with electroleum, a naturally occurring alloy of gold and silver. If you could only just collect this alloy from the river and create equally sized, equally pure coins, then the friction of purity testing and weighing of bullion coins would be solved and commerce would take place at a faster rate. Thus, from your idea, government-issued minted coins were born. They were made of electroleum and had a lion's head stamped on it because, well, he thought it was cool. Soon after, more kingdoms followed suit and minted coins were all the rage across the world, and they stayed on top for more than half a millennia. But it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. Minted coins brought their fair share of problems, especially if you were a traveling merchant. They were heavy, which meant that they took up space that could be used to squeeze in more wares. Minted coins were also very loud, which made them draw unwanted attention. And trust me, unwanted attention is the last thing you want, especially when traveling between towns on unfamiliar roads. To solve this problem, merchants started depositing their coins to banks that had multiple branches across many towns, and just like that, paper money was born. Paper money began as receipts you get in exchange for any deposits of gold and silver you made. Although I refer to it as paper money, you couldn't really purchase anything with it. You still had to go to the bank and withdraw it before any purchase was made. Regardless, merchants could now travel with some semblance of peace, knowing that if they did get robbed, they wouldn't lose everything. They still had some gold in the bank. Paper didn't replace minted coins, it replaced the friction caused by the transportation of coins. Back then, notes were just promises between individuals and private banks. It took until the Song dynasty in the early 11th century for the central government to step in and start issuing the first standardized state-issued paper currency called jiaozi. Like the minted coins before it, this new evolution of money took over the world, but its fundamental principle remained the same. Notes were a means to an end, and that end was the gold in the bank. The principle of paper money being tied to gold was one that lasted centuries, getting a rebrand at the tail end of World War II as the Bretton Woods system. This system fixed the value of gold to the US dollar, and it was implemented in 1944 until
the strength of a nation's currency is based on the strength of that nation's economy. And the American economy is by far the strongest in the world. Accordingly, I have directed the Secretary of the Treasury to take the action necessary to defend the dollar against the speculators. I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets, except in amounts and conditions determined to be in the interest of monetary stability and in the best interest of the United States.
I know he said temporarily, but the US never went back, and soon after, other countries followed suit. This event came to be known as Nixon shock or the closing of the gold window. Although both are made using paper, the money you hold today and the money people held before the speech in 1971 is not the same. Today's money is called fiat money, while the money before 1971 is called commodity money. The difference? Well, it goes back to the speech I just showed you. Basically, President Nixon ended the Bretton Woods system, meaning that while the money before 1971 was valuable because it represented a set amount of gold in the bank, today's money is valuable because the government says it is. Or to put it properly, fiat money is valuable because government declares it to be the legal tender and people have confidence it will be accepted in exchange for goods and services. This, I'd argue, was the peak of abstraction. Money was no longer tethered to any tangible object, it was just money. This freedom is what paved the way for instant transactions, because what happens when you push peak abstraction even further? You get pure fucking magic. You get digital money. Your bank balance, credit card payments, and online transfers are all digital representations of fiat money, which can be created out of thin air. But the plot thickens. In 2020, the US Mint shipped 15.5 billion circulating coins, and the Bureau of Engraving and Printing printed 6.2 billion bills, all totaling the value of 254 billion. To give you some perspective, that's the same as the estimated net worth of Jeff Bezos in 2025. Think about that. In 2020, the US government basically printed out a new Jeff Bezos worth of money. But it gets crazier. All the money that was printed out only represented approximately 6.37% of the 4 trillion created in the US that year. And people say 2020 was a slow year. Wait a minute. If the coins and bills created in 2020 only represented 6.37 of the new money, how was the other 93.63 made? The answer is pretty simple actually. It was all created digitally. The most intriguing part of this digital money is that a very large portion of it was not created by the central bank, but instead by commercial banks. Think your FNBs, Capitex, Chase, and whatnot. It is what we call broad money. The process of its creation is a bit more complicated though. For now, all I want you to keep in mind is that when a bank approves a mortgage for you, it doesn't give you money from its vault or another customer's account. It simply creates a new deposit in your bank account out of nothing. So when you swipe your credit card for that labubu you've been fiending for, your bank creates new money to loan out to you. Through this process, banks can issue out more loans without ever having to worry about whether they have enough gold supply to issue it out. And you can buy any treat you want without having to waste a day at the bank. It's easy. All you have to do is swipe your card and all your dreams will come true. Feel free and shop like a billionaire. What's the worst that could ever happen? That is what happens to you. Look, throughout this whole video, I've spoken ad nauseum about how money has evolved, but what about our brain? Has it kept up with this evolution, or are we still programmed for a world of tangible transactions whilst the matrix has moved forward relentlessly? Look, money is as abstract as ever, and on our path to seemingly solve every single logistical problem we may have encountered, we inadvertently created a psychological vulnerability. The result? The debt crisis you see today. The debt crisis banks profit from. We call it Spendception. Spendception refers to the way in which using digital payment methods changes people's perception of spending, often reducing psychological barriers to spending, making them more likely to purchase items impulsively. In Q2 of 2025, the New York Fed showed that credit card balances grew by 27%, rising to the highest they've ever been at 1.21 trillion. What that means? The average debt borrower who carries a balance owes $6,473. This marks an increase of $1,000 since Q2 of 2022. These people are already unable to pay off their full credit card bill at the end of the month, but their debt keeps on growing. Why don't they just stop? The bitter truth is that the powers that be take steps to make it as hard as possible to stop, and they do this through 3 methods. Let's start with one that you've definitely felt before: the pain of paying. The pain of paying is the immediate negative emotional response people feel when they give up money. Have you ever wondered why it seems like more and more businesses are moving towards a cashless mode of transactions, whether it be McDonald's and KFC with their self-order kiosks? Well, similar to King Aliatis, it was initially because these companies were trying to increase speed and efficiency of transactions while lowering operational costs and the risk of theft, but their pursuit came with an unintended consequence that retailers were more than happy to welcome. This consequence is known as the cashless effect. You see, in 2019, a study was conducted comparing brain activation when participants used varying payment methods, mainly cash, card, or smartphone. An fMRI scan was conducted and it showed that cash payments significantly activate the insula, the region of the brain associated with pain, disgust, and loss. Digital payments result in lower insular activation, proving that the act of swiping or tapping reduces the emotional discomfort of spending. Look at these 2 scenarios and tell me in the comments which one you choose. Scenario A: you just had a long day at work and all you want to do is get home to your bed and your dog. You have 5 minutes until you clock out, but all the work for the day is pretty much done. So you open up your phone and look around the Uber app for a ride home. You find one that's $17, it's only 4 minutes away, and you decide to add a tip of $3 to the driver within the app, making your total $20. You choose the option, then begin heading downstairs. Your driver arrives, you say hi, he greets you as well. The drive starts, there is a bit of traffic on the road, but you pass through it and in the blink of an eye, you've arrived to your destination. You say goodbye, you exit his taxi, open your door, and your dog hugs you. You head to bed and you plop down. Now look at scenario B. You just had a long day at work and all you want to do is get home to your bed and your dog. You have 5 minutes until you clock out, but all the work for the day is pretty much done. There is nothing to do but stare at the clock. Finally, it's 1 minute to 5 p.m. You start heading down the office building and the city is as noisy as ever. You're desperately trying to find a taxi, but no shit Sherlock, every other employed person has the same plan as you. Luckily, you manage to find a ride. You tell him your address and he starts the meter. He says hi while he starts the car, but you're focused on the meter. Why did he start the meter before starting the car? Like, isn't that kinda robbing, man? What's going on here? And why is the meter moving up so fast? You're so focused on the meter you forget to say hi back. The car starts moving and on the way, you run into traffic. Your eyes are still stuck on the meter, but finally, you get through the traffic jam and blink, you're already home. Your total is $17. He says that while looking back at you. Your hands move towards your pockets and out comes 3 bills. All of them are 20s. Does he even have change? You start to wonder. You hand him the bill and he looks at you with an awkward smile and he tells you, I don't have change, man. He offers to head to a corner shop where you can get some change, but honestly, that sounds like a hassle. You're tired, you just want to get home. So you decide to tip him the change and begin to head out. He says thank you while you close the backseat door. You open the door to your house and your dog hugs you. You head to bed and you plop down. Scenario A, the payment and the service are decoupled and seamless. The pain of paying is largely absent as there is no physical exchange of money and you already know the upfront cost. The price paid is final, allowing you to not even pay it mind by the time you enter the Uber. The trip/service becomes the focus. In scenario B, the payment and the service are coupled since payment must occur immediately upon reaching the destination, thus interrupting the experience. You're constantly looking at the meter while wondering what is the exact amount you are required to pay. You also can't help but wonder why the driver is taking the longer route just to increase the fare. In this scenario, the transaction is the focus. Even though the amount of money you paid at the end is the same, one trip was more enjoyable and it all came down to the payment method you used. Businesses take advantage of this effect by encouraging payment methods that are seamless and digital because they are fully aware that when the pain of paying is reduced, you are more likely to spend more often while simultaneously spending more, thus ensuring repeat revenue at a higher margin for the retailer. So digital payments dull the pain of spending, but banks don't just stop there. If spending doesn't hurt anymore, why not make it feel good? With that thought in mind, the bank started looking at a different industry, one that is expertly designed to keep you engaged and motivated, the gaming industry. I mean, think about it. Games give you points when you defeat enemies, badges when you achieve something cool, and progress bars that show you how far you are into the mission. Banks saw this and they thought to themselves, damn, let me get a piece of that pie, man. Banks started giving out rewards and points for spending on specific items at specific stores, and buy now pay later companies began including progress bars whenever you made a payment. When game design elements are applied to non-game contexts to increase engagement and motivation, we get what is known as gamification. Oh, admittedly, gamification might just be the tamest one amongst the three, since it can also be used positively, like helping you keep track of your savings goals, but it does have negative elements to it, like encouraging you to buy items you don't need from certain stores just so you can get points and rewards. The problem is that while points and cashback encourage you to spend without paying, they can lead to massive credit card balances. That's why banks have a final devastating line of defense designed to ensure that the overspending from the first 2 tricks keeps you trapped. This trap doesn't hit you when you swipe, it hits you when your statement arrives. This third trick is called the minimum payment anchor. Quick story. Recently I was on Instagram and I came across a reel of this dude who had managed to buy himself a very beautiful BMW. He was also bragging about how low his monthly payment was. I was impressed by the dude. He managed to buy himself a nice car for cheap until I found out how he did it. This guy managed to finance his car for 180 months. That's 15 years. And I think we can all agree that financing a car for 15 years is insane and a terrible financial choice. But if you are a credit card holder, you might be falling for the same trick. The minimum payment anchor is basically a cognitive bias where the small minimum payment listed on a credit card acts as an anchor by suggesting that the minimum payment is the appropriate or recommended payment amount, even though you can afford to pay more. The key to the minimum payment anchor is how it makes monthly payments feel psychologically weightless by removing the need to think about the amount you're going to pay. Experiments conducted in 2009 show that when the minimum payment was removed or hidden, consumers on average paid 70% more, allowing people to pay off their full balance quicker. Banks are legally required to display the minimum payment for a credit card, but they implement it strategically to convince you that it's the most appropriate amount of money. They do this by making the minimum payment bold while positioning it at the top of the contract or at a designated summary box where you can easily see it. They sometimes place the minimum payment next to the full balance so that the full balance triggers the pain of paying, while the minimum payment Minimum payment anchoring leads to a massive long-term increase in consumer debt and interest paid. Consumers who consistently pay only the minimum can take years, even decades, to pay off a balance, often incurring more in interest than the original purchase price. This traps them in the high interest debt spiral. Look, we've been on a journey to make money lighter, faster, and more convenient. We stripped away the need for weighing, the need for gold, the need for paper, and finally, the need for pain. But in solving all these logistical problems of wealth, we created a massive psychological vulnerability that the banks now exploit. The question isn't how we beat the minimum payment, it's how do we bring back the friction? Cows! What brings more friction than cows? They are slow, they are big, and no, I'm not talking about going back to bartering. What I'm proposing is a fully functional cow currency. Money, if you're with me. And if you think it's illogical and impossible, I'd like to let you know that you're completely wrong, because cows have been used as a form of money by not only one, but two societies throughout Earth's history. Exhibit A, the Maasai. The Maasai are a group of semi-nomadic people who inhabit northern Tanzania as well as part of central and southern Kenya. Their history can be traced all the way back to the 15th century, and with it we learn about their strong relationship with cattle. To the Maasai, cattle serves as the primary source of sustenance, a symbol of wealth and social status, and a central element in their cultural and social life. They used cattle to settle disputes like when one member of the clan injured another member. Cows were surely to be involved in the settlement. Payments for bride prices, they were involved. Gifts at social ceremonies, like when a boy transitions to warriorhood, they would be there. You see, the Maasai revere cattle as a sacred gift from their god Enkai, but on the other side of the Atlantic, it was a totally different story. Exhibit B, Ireland. Cattle as a form of currency was so deeply embedded into early Irish society, it was written in the law of the time, the Brennan Laws. What makes the system so interesting was that it was complex enough to realize that not all cows were created equally. So they did what any reasonable man would do. They ranked them from the most valuable to the least valuable. The milk-producing cow was the gold standard, worth the most, while the young bulls sat at the bottom. This system is similar to banknotes that we use today, where different notes denote different levels of value. The Irish even continued their reliance on cattle post 1169, despite Anglo-Norman efforts to introduce coin-based systems. Two questions though. How was this possible, and why doesn't anyone use it today? Both these questions can be answered by just looking at the definition of money, which gives us 4 conditions that need to be met for something to be considered money. Cows pass some of the tests of money. They can be mediums of exchange and stores of value, but they also fail badly at others. Mainly, cows suck at being units of account. Basically, money needs to provide a common measure of value for goods and services, thus allowing us to compare the worth of different items and express the price in a standardized manner. This is where cow money becomes problematic, because unlike paper bills, no two cows are ever truly equal. One might be fatter and the other might be stronger. Suddenly, a simple exchange becomes an argument over which cow is worth more. That's the hidden flaw of cow money. That's why ultimately it lost relevance. But if you've been paying attention throughout the video, you know that that's not the only reason why. 165 centimeters by 250 centimeters, all topped off by 545 kilograms of weight. These are the measurements of an average cow. So with that in mind, I want you to consider this. Are you willing to lug around the masters heavy every single day, every single place, every single moment, just in case you want a fresh tiramisu on your way home? No. The truth is, the logistics of cow money just doesn't work. Sure, you can use cows for purchasing huge items like houses or paying fines for the occasional accidental murder, but if you simply want a drink from a vending machine or a cake at a bakery, then you're gonna have issues that cow money simply can't solve. Hear me out though. There is beauty in cow money. A cow's value is inherent and practical. It provides milk, meat, manpower, it multiplies. I mean, it's a unit of value that you can literally milk. Your wealth was literally grazing in your field. You could see it, touch it, feel it, and hell, if you were crazy enough, you could eat it. This is where the power of cow money lies. You are always inherently conscious of how much you have at all times. That's something I think we've lost touch on. Personally, there are times when I know I've overspent on takeouts, and between online subscriptions and bank charges, I'm not too sure of how much I have in the account, and that kind of scares me. It's not an existential fear or anything that's serious, but I'm keenly aware of the times where I don't want to open my banking app because I don't want to know how much I have in my account. I know it doesn't look good, but I also don't want to deal with it right now. But none of the problems I've discussed in this video can be solved without taking the first step, which is to simply look into your account and be keenly aware of how much you have. Once you do that, then you can move on to the next step, which is to think about the cow. Cow money is a product of times past, but the friction it introduces is something we can stand to learn from. I need to be more intentional with the way I spend my money, and one of the easiest ways I have found to increase friction is to withdraw a certain percentage of my uni allowance every month to use for daily expenses. Because the cash itself is limited, it makes me more intentional of what I want to spend it on. And if I am ever in a situation where cash is not accepted, I just don't buy. That's just an excuse for me to hold on to more of my money. At the start, I asked you not to think about how much you have, but how you feel about it. Cows made people feel great as they gazed at their wealth grazing in a field. Today though, our wealth is invisible, abstract, and that's why Spendception works. The dilemma of money isn't cows or coins or credit cards, it's how much friction we're willing to lose before we lose touch with what money really means to us.